College football has had many stars over the years, and there's been a ton of big-time quarterbacks over the last couple of decades. In today's video, I want to spotlight the top 10 passers in NCAA history and talk about what the heck happened to them. We're going to be doing this based on career passing yards, so we're going to go through all the guys who are listed in the top 10 all time, talk about their careers, and what they are up to nowadays. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to the top 10 passers of all time. Okay, so at number 10 we have Baker Mayfield, who has 14,607 yards. Coming out of Lake Travis High School, we all know the Baker Mayfield story. He was not able to get a full ride scholarship, so he would decide to walk on at Texas Tech, where he'd eventually take over as the starter in 2013, throwing for 2,300 yards with 12 touchdowns. He would decide to sit out a year and transfer to Oklahoma, where he became a 3-year starter for the Oklahoma Sooners. He threw for over 3,700 yards in his next 2 seasons, and combined for 76 touchdowns in those 2 years. His best year would come in 2017 though, as he would throw for 4,627 yards with 43 touchdowns. He was not only a unanimous All-American, but he eventually won the Heisman Trophy, and also got an opportunity to go at the number 1 overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft to the Browns. Sadly, his time did not start out great, as in his first few years with the Browns, he was not able to win a lot of games, and many were calling him a bust. He had a ton of turnovers in 2018 and 19 with the Browns, and then in 2022, he spent time as both a backup with the Rams and the Panthers. In 2023, he was traded to Tampa Bay and ended up reviving his career. Last season, he threw for 4,000 yards with 28 touchdowns, and so far this year, he has 2,200 yards with 21 touchdowns, and Mayfield has definitely saved his career. In total, he's thrown for 22,521 yards and 151 touchdowns in the league, and my goodness, when you think about it, Mayfield has played a lot of football. At number 9, we have Kellen Moore, who has 14,667 yards, and he ended up playing for Boise State. After he was born in the state of Washington, he went to Prosser High School, and eventually became the Gatorade Player of the Year for the state. He decided to sign with Boise, and as we all know, he was tremendous for them. He was a 4-year starter for the Broncos, leading into some of their best moments in school history, as he threw for over 3,400 yards in each of his 3 seasons in Boise, and combined for 142 touchdowns in 4 years. Kellen Moore was a bona fide superstar, and was a 2-time first-team All-American. So despite being insane, he ended up going undrafted in 2012, but Kellen Moore would fight. He'd end up signing with the Dallas Cowboys in 2015, and actually would end up throwing for 700 yards with 4 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Moore's future though was in coaching, as after that he was the Cowboys quarterbacks coach, then was the offensive coordinator from 2019 and 22, and then last year with the Chargers he was also the OC. Currently, he's the OC for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Kellen Moore is one of the bigger up-and-coming names in coaching, and with how good he was in his career and how marvelous he was, there's a good reason why he is a coach and why everybody respects him. At number 8, we have former BYU quarterback Ty Detmer. He ended up finishing with 15,031 yards. Detmer is one of the more famous players in college football history, as after going to Southwest High School in San Antonio, Texas, he'd end up going to BYU, where he would start for the Cougars for quite some time and put up insane numbers. He became the full-time starter in 1989 for them and emerged as one of the top QBs in the nation, throwing for 4,600 yards and 32 touchdowns. His junior season was one of the best in college football history, as he passed for 5,100 yards with 41 touchdowns. He finished that year with 42 NCAA records, and Detmer was insane. He finished his college career with over 1,500 passing attempts, 15,000 yards, 121 touchdowns, and 162.7 passer rating. After that, Detmer would end up going off to the NFL, as he was selected with the 230th pick in the 9th round, and would spend his first 2 years with the Green Bay Packers, then would spend 1996 and 97 with Philadelphia, 1998 with San Francisco, 1999 with Cleveland, and 2001 with Detroit. Detmer would then end up being a head coach in Texas from 2009 to 2015, was an OC and quarterbacks coach for BYU for a year or two, and now is once again a head coach. Well, here's a fun one. At number 7 on our list, we have Bo Nix. He would end up passing for 15,352 yards, but still doesn't take away from his incredible career. The son of a former Auburn quarterback, Bo Nix would become a 5-star recruit in the class of 2019, and would end up spending his first couple of years with Auburn. As a freshman, he threw for 2,500 yards with 16 touchdowns, and would hover around the same stat line his next 2 years. Going into 2022, Nix would end up passing for 3,600 yards with 29 touchdowns before he would return for one final season of college football. Nix in 2023 ended up passing for 4,500 yards with 45 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. Nix was named the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year and would end up getting enough hype to be picked at number 12 overall in the first round by the Denver Broncos. So far in 2024, Nix has played in 8 games and has thrown for 1,500 yards with 8 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, and has run for 4 more on the ground. Nix does look like a future franchise quarterback right now, and while things could fall apart, he had a great college career, and his NFL career is still to be determined. At number 6 on the list, we have another guy who left college football after 2023, Sam Hartman. Hartman finished with 15,656 yards, and going back in time, no one really ever saw this. He ended up going to the prestigious Davidson Day High School in North Carolina, where he put up insane numbers while he was there. He didn't really get that much recruiting attention though, so you'd end up going to Wake Forest, where Hartman would end up having a tremendous career there. In my opinion, Hartman really deserves an asterisk because he played 6 years, but he threw for 2,000 yards and 16 touchdowns as a freshman, and then over the next 4 years, broke a lot of Wake Forest records. His best season was in 2021 as he threw for 4,200 yards with 39 touchdowns and got Wake all the way to the ACC Championship. 2022 was pretty much the same thing, and then for his final year he would transfer to Notre Dame, where he'd throw for 2,600 yards with 24 touchdowns and 8 picks, but was kind of known as being a little bit soft and didn't exactly live up to the hype coming out of the portal. Hartman still got an opportunity to go to the NFL though, as he was taken as an undrafted free agent by the Washington Commanders, where he is currently on the team as a practice squad player. Sam Hartman's best known for his hair right now, and while I don't like the fact that he played 6 years, he was still a really good quarterback during his time in college and deserves a lot of credit. And number 5 on the list, we have Graham Harrell, who passed for 15,793 yards while playing for Texas Tech. He ended up being born in the town of Brownwood, Texas, and would eventually go to Ennis High School before going over to Texas Tech. During his time with the Red Raiders, he was pretty nuts. He would start 6 games in 2005 before taking over as the full-fledged starter in 06, 07, and 08. He threw for 4,500 yards in 2006, 5,700 in 2007, and 5,100 in 2008. In those 3 years, he had 131 touchdowns, had that famous pass to Michael Crabtree to beat Texas, and ended up breaking pretty much every school record in Texas Tech history. Harrell would play in an air raid style of offense, so it didn't exactly translate to the league, as he would spend time in the CFL in 2009 before getting a small opportunity with both the Packers and the Jets, before then becoming a coach. He started out at Oklahoma State, and then joined Mike Leach as a receivers coach at Washington State from 2014 to 2015. He got his first offensive coordinator job at North Texas, and then in 2019 he took the OC job for USC. He kind of flamed out there, so he became the OC at West Virginia, and that didn't work out, so he became the OC at Purdue in 2023 with Ryan Walters. He ended up throwing Purdue's offense into the ground and was recently fired a couple weeks ago. So while Graham Harrell was a tremendous college player and has had a decent coaching legacy, he has not seemingly been able to figure it out at the highest level of college football, and who knows where he'll end up next. At number 4, we have Landry Jones, who threw for 16,646 yards with the Oklahoma Sooners. Coming out of the state of New Mexico, Landry Jones was a 5-star recruit and was the quarterback that everybody wanted. In terms of the class of 2008, Landry Jones was potentially the guy. He's one of those guys who ended up having a great career, as he started in 2009, throwing for 3,100 yards and 26 touchdowns, and then would have his best season as a Sooner his sophomore year, throwing for 4,700 yards with 38 touchdowns. In 2011, he once again threw for nearly 4,500 yards, and in 2012, he threw for 4,300. And total in his time in Norman, he passed for 16,646 yards with 123 total touchdowns. Landry Jones was a great college player and would end up getting an opportunity to go to the NFL. He was taken with the 115th overall pick in the 4th round and spent all 3 of his years in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He actually played in a total of 18 games between 2015 and 2017, and Landry Jones would finish with 1,300 yards with 8 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. As of now, I have no idea what Landry Jones is doing, but he never really made it work as an NFL quarterback, but was the perfect example of a quarterback who was really good in college, and I bet Oklahoma fans wish they had a guy like Landry right now. At number 3, with 17,072 passing yards, we have former Hawaii quarterback Timmy Chang. Chang has a great story, as he ended up growing up in the state of Hawaii and went to the prestigious St. Louis High School, which is where a lot of good quarterbacks went. In total in high school, he passed for over 8,000 yards and 113 touchdowns, and would decide to stay home and play for the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. In the year 2000, in his first year starting, he threw for 3,000 yards, before then throwing for over 4,000 yards in 3 of his next 4 years. In total, with 5 years at Hawaii, Chang would throw for 17,072 yards with 117 total touchdowns. Chang did kind of struggle with interceptions, but he knew how to air the ball out. He wouldn't end up getting drafted and would end up going with the Arizona Cardinals at first, and then would spend time with Detroit and Philadelphia before going down to the lower levels of football. In 2012, he decided to go into coaching and got his first start at SMU, and then he also spent time at schools like Jackson State and Nevada before he eventually started to make his way up the coaching ladder with the Wolfpack. In 2022, when Hawaii decided to get a new head coach, they hired up their old legend, and Timmy Chang has been the coach for them the last 2 years. It hasn't exactly gone great though, as so far since 2022, Chang is 11-23 there. Ultimately, it does not look like Chang is going to make it at Hawaii, but he was an absolute star, and it's impressive he became a head coach. At number 2, we have a player who is still currently in college football, and that is Dillon Gabriel, who so far has 17,236 passing yards with UCF, Oklahoma, and Oregon. Going back in time, Gabriel was just a 3-star recruit, and actually also came from the state of Hawaii. He ended up being the Gatorade Football Player of the Year and would decide to sign with UCF after passing for nearly 10,000 yards during his time in high school. Gabriel would end up being a backup at first, but would eventually take over, throwing for 3,600 yards as a freshman, and then in 2020 had a tremendous year, throwing for 3,500 yards and 32 touchdowns. That was technically his second best season so far, as in 2021 he was limited due to injury, and then would transfer over to Oklahoma after flirting with a couple of other schools in the portal. During his 2 years with the Sooners, he combined for nearly 7,000 yards and 45 touchdowns, and had a moderate amount of success. But due to everything going on in the world, instead of Gabriel going off to the NFL or being out of eligibility, he had one last year, and he has since decided to transfer to Oregon to take over for Bo Nix. So far, through a couple of games, Gabriel has nearly 2,400 yards with 18 touchdowns and only 5 picks, and has his Oregon team undefeated, and he's in the Heisman race. I'm not sure if he'll win it, but Gabriel has definitely proven to be a superstar, but there is really no shot of him taking that number 1 overall spot, because that is always going to go to Case Keenum, and I don't know if that'll ever be passed. After going to Wiley High School, Case Keenum would decide to enroll at Houston, where this dude went crazy. After redshirting in 2006, he threw for 2,300 yards in 2007, and then the real madness begins. He threw for over 5,000 yards and 44 touchdowns in 2008, 5,600 yards and 44 touchdowns in 2009, and then in 2011 threw for 5,600 yards and 48 scores. During his time at Houston, he finished with an absurd 19,217 yards and 155 touchdowns. Honestly, Case Keenum deserves a little bit of credit for making Houston relevant, as they are now in the Power 4, and he was at the start of that rise. Keenum's NFL career is also pretty nuts, as he started out with the Houston Texans and actually got an opportunity to play a bit for them in 2013. He played a little bit in 14 as well, before becoming a Ram in 15 and 16, and then he actually started for Minnesota in 2017. In total, he threw for 3,500 yards and 22 touchdowns with the Vikings, and then in 2018 with Denver, he'd throw for a career-high 3,800 yards and 18 touchdowns. From there, he went to Washington in 2019, spent 2020 and 21 with Cleveland, 2022 with Buffalo, and 2023 back with Houston. In his NFL career, Keenum has over 15,000 passing yards and 79 touchdowns. This guy has thrown a lot of passes and has dominated and been good wherever he's been. He truly is one of the best, if not the best, quarterbacks in college football history, and deserves to be at the top. So yeah, what do you guys think? What do you think of the top 10 passers of all time, and what other style of video should I do next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.